Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hi, Sydney. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm super excited to have you. Like I was telling you, I saw your name in an article, binged all of your stuff, and then was like, oh, I'm going to be that creeper that's like, hey, can I have you as a guest on my podcast?
I
I love
love
that you
it. I
said yes.
appreciate it. Yes, thank you. It's flattering. I appreciate it, and I feel like I should be doing more of that. Honestly,
Okay.
creeping, as you say.
So my audience may not know you, so can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I am Sydney. I'm a Seattleite. Was raised here for my whole life, basically. I work in tech during the day, but at night, I'm a mom, and I also have a co-parenting support organization. Yeah, so we help. It's called Exes and Babies, and we might get into that a little bit more later. But really, I'm a co-parent myself. My ex and I split up after my son was 2 years old, 3 years old, and we really were able to navigate our dynamic and get along pretty well, and solve problems together. And so people took a liking to that. They noticed that and would ask us for advice, and so it's like there's something here. And so I ended up creating a podcast, and him and I actually did the podcast together. And then eventually it blew up, but not in terms of numbers, and we're still working at that. But it blew up in terms of the engagement, the interest. And so I ended up turning into business and found another co-host because he was seeing it more as a hobby, my ex, and I really wanted to like make this a thing so we could fully support co-parents. And so went forward, made Exes and Babies, and became a certified coach to be a co-parent coach. Offer workshops, and we're just growing and moving and shaking. And so, but it's been really, really rewarding to work with this community.
I love it. I love that you work with co-parents and not just like the parents or the step parents.
Right.
So, can you talk to me about how you guys navigated this amicably without losing it and like just letting your egos get the best of you? Like, what does that look like?
I would say honestly, we had been together for almost 10 years. We'd gotten like couples therapy. So I think that played a role in how we communicated and reflected on things. And I think that allowed us to bring some maturity to our uncoupling. You hear people say conscious uncoupling. I'm reading that book now. But anywho, I think that allowed us to have communication. And I just saw my ex holistically, even though we both made mistakes. I saw him as a human who's gonna have flaws. Sometimes he's gonna do stuff that's gonna hurt me, but I don't take it. It's not personal. And I think because I was able to separate that out, like him making mistakes or me making mistakes, right? I'm not perfect either. And seeing us as whole humans, because I was able to look at us that way. I just didn't see it as like the end of the world. I was like, there's so abundance. That's the word that comes to mind. It's like there's abundance to who we are as people. We're going to continue to grow, but there's also abundance to like what else is out there. Maybe we've naturally reached our ending point, and there's no shame in that. We did our best, and so I think that's a lot of what makes co-parenting hard, especially from the beginning, is the shame of it all and the hurt, the separation. You have to grieve that separation and so on and so forth. But I told him early on, I was like, we can still be friends and try to raise our child. We don't have to be enemies. I don't want to be enemies. I don't have the energy for that. I can't keep up that energy. And so anywho, so I think that helped us. I just had this vision. I don't know if it was my ancestors or what have you. It was just on my heart to just be like, hey, this doesn't have to suck, because I don't want it to. And I still want to raise our child, but I also think there's something else out there for me romantically. So
Yeah, I think it was your first podcast when I listened to about like you guys undoing, and you're like, well, we're attractive people, of course we're going to find other people. And I laughed because I felt like, yeah, just because you're not working out with this person doesn't mean that you're not going to work out with somebody else. But then also that means that at some point there's going to be somebody else in your life or somebody else in his life. And I know that you guys had already had like an agreement about what that was going to look like and when that time came in. Can you talk a little bit about that? Wait,
Yeah.
first, was it hard to like think of him with somebody else? Or because you had that holistic feeling
I
where
want
you're
to
like,
be,
look, right.
sorry. Yeah, I want to be honest. I mean, I don't think I had gotten that far in my head, like realistically, but I was done.
Mhm,
So I think that's what helped is I didn't have looming feelings of like, well, maybe, or if we could, like, I didn't have that. I really was done. And when I'm done, I'm done. I'm someone who gives a
mhm,
lot of chances or like does a lot. I'm real willing to problem solve and work together and get support and resources. But when I'm done, I'm done. And so I didn't have those feelings of trying to make it work romantically. And I think that allowed me to just pivot and focus on like how we're going to get along as co-parents. And as far as thinking about him with another person, I don't know. I don't think I was thinking that far along. However, when we had that conversation, because I was like, okay, we know we're going to find people though, regardless. Let's do this cordially. Like, let's make sure that we get a chance to meet the other person, that we engage them. I've always been an athlete in teams, and I've always gravitated towards conflict resolution. I was an RA at my college, and I'm on teams in the corporate world too. And so I think I just bring that to how I co-parent. I bring, let's make an agenda and like a routine meeting for how we talk about our child and things like that. I bring that to my co-parenting space because these are tried and true methods for getting shit done. Because
mhm,
that's what we got to do as parents. We still got to get things done. And so I just bring that into there. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't so hard because it was still a thought exercise.
mhm.
When he did start dating folks though, and I wasn't like really thrilled, I wasn't sure what he saw in them. Um, and it wasn't until he brought in his current partner that I was like, okay, I trust this. I trust him. I trust her. I love who he brought into his life. At first, I think he was just testing the waters or having fun or whatever it was. I don't know. Some of those folks I don't think would have been great stepmoms to my son, but I was really grateful when he found the person he's with now.
Okay. What parameters, boundaries, whatever you like to call it, did you have as far as like dating? Was it, do you have to wait this amount of time? What did you guys have set up, if anything?
Yeah, I think also because we came up with a lot of these parameters before we were in the waters, we came
Yeah.
up with too many or like really bright-eyed, bushy-tailed ideas of what was going to happen. And so, but anyways, some of the parameters were I don't really fully remember, but definitely waiting until you like might want to marry this person before introducing them to our child. So if you're just a fling or you don't know, or you have attachment things where you get really excited really quickly, if you haven't, you have to know yourself. So one, knowing yourself and knowing, okay, I sometimes get a little excited too quickly and I start fantasizing about what something can be way too soon, probably. Now I'm
Mhm.
really exposing my flaws, but anywho, okay. But knowing that about myself, I know I gotta wait. I know I gotta make sure that they've met my mom, my best friends, and like they've been filtered through the process of people
Right.
trust to evaluate, someone. And I trust myself too. But yeah, so we do that. So like waiting that to make sure that this is really gonna happen. And that can take months. So for me, I do like 6 months. I'm like, if we've been talking for 6 months, we've gone through a certain amount of discussion. I like to talk very deeply, very quickly. And so I can really get to the crux of who someone is. So we've talked very deeply for 6 months, right? They've probably met my mom at that point, maybe, and a friend or what have you. Then I would be interested. And I let his dad know. And so we've both had to do this before because I did have a boyfriend during COVID. um, and tested it out and I think it worked really well. At that point we were like, okay, we need to meet the person before they meet the child. And at some point it just didn't naturally happen like that. And we still waited that time, but we let the other person like, hey, they're gonna meet the person today, or it just kind of just like we're all in the same space. Some kind of transition didn't happen, right? And
Mhm.
so we made space for that not being perfect. And then once my son started talking about Keisha, who's my ex's partner, once he started bringing her up, oh, she said this and we're doing this, I'm like, oh, sounds like I need to meet this person. Like, and so they sound like a very integral part of your life at this point, or somewhat. Let me go ahead and ask to have that meeting. And so yeah.
And you had an agenda for this meeting. Tell me about this.
I'm trying to see. I actually have it
I love it. I'm like,
on my phone.
you, yeah, are speaking my language.
Well, it's because, oh yeah, I have it right here. I have it pinned at the top, but because I want to be able to eventually share this with folks on my brand, with my brand. But I remember again, Adam and I agreed that we would have my child's father. We agreed that we would have these meetings, you know, once it came to be a very serious relationship with that new partner. And when it came time, when I felt like it came time, okay, my son's been talking about it. I know that they met. He let me know. We both found people around the same time. And so, you know, it's okay. It sounds like it's time. Like Dior, our son keeps mentioning her, and it's been some time. She's already met him, like yada yada. And he's like, "Oh, we don't think that's necessary." And I was just like, uh, "Huh? Like, what? Didn't we agree on this before?" And so I don't know what was happening internally for him, but just having known him for so long, I think he was a little concerned. He wasn't sure where this was going to go and so on and so forth. And so he's like, well, what are we going to talk about? I was like, oh, let me ease his concern or what have you and have an agenda. So I came up with a purpose. What's the purpose of this meeting? Which was to set a sound foundation for co-parenting by discussing parenting slash co-parenting philosophies and proactively defining culture, setting the tone for our co-parenting relationship and the one we desire, expect, and what have you. So I wanted to use language like envision, desire, expectations, and said that the discussion guidelines are really, you know, Dior's well-being is number one, right? But also we matter too. You know, our well-being matters too. And then let's discard any horror stories we've heard about co-parenting. Let's just throw it out the window because we get to make what we want this to be. Let's assume positive intent, no interrupting. Let's be transparent, solution-seeking vibes only. Participate. We will be brainstorming together. So I'm like right now setting the tone, like, hey, you're a part of this. Keisha, you're part of this. This isn't us telling you how we want you to do this because you're a part of this. Like, and she has great ideas, and I want to honor, you know, when I have a partner too, they're going to have some ideas, they're going to have value that they can add to this mix of raising Dior. And so and I said, dare I say, let's have some fun. I threw in some emojis because yeah, and then I covered some topics. Let's talk about goals for Dior's life. Let's talk about his upbringing, our desired co-parenting culture and values, boundaries, and determine a process for sharing feedback and requests. I said I was going to bring the post-it paper, poster paper. They're like, you're doing a lot now.
I was going to ask, I mean, that is a really well thought out agenda. And I love that it's super organized because, yeah, you know, at some point, somehow, some way, in any sort of co-parenting, blended, even like partner to partner, things are going to go sideways, right? And you can always be like, hey, wait, we are way off topic. Let's head back to point number 352. Like that's where we were. So when you presented this, were they just mouse on the drawer? I mean, jaws on the floor?
I don't know because it was in text, but she responded, or maybe later on told me like, oh, that was a lot. Like that, she didn't expect me to have like a full-on list of how we're going to discuss.
You're like, let me tell you why. The guy that you're with.
Right. I'm sure in retrospect, she appreciates it. And as she said in the podcast episode that we did with it, interviewing her about our dynamic and how she came into being in Dior's life and what that looks like, you know, she mentioned that she was appreciative that Adam and I already had thought about what co-parenting looks like and already had something in place for her to come into and not be thrown into the mix of a crazy dynamic potentially that hadn't been figured out. And so even though I know she's like, okay, this is a lot of text and thinking for something she probably thought was simple, right? But anywho, I think she appreciated how we approached it in the end, at the end of the day. So
yeah, as a stepmom, when you sign up to be a stepmom, you're not signing up for your stepkid's mom to be like, hey, here's the agenda for the very first time I'm going to meet you. And here's what that's going to look like. And maybe we're going to have fun. And you're like, who is this person that's doing all this?
Yeah, I know,
Right?
I know.
Yeah. Like, And yeah, I do remember her saying that she liked how well thought out you guys had it. Like if it was going to be crazy, she was like, I'm out. Like I'm not doing this because and honestly though, I think that's the normal like for co-parenting situations. If things are there's a lot of conflict or there's a lot of animosity or there's jealousy or there's resentment about whatever, that tends to be the more normal because that's what I see as far as like coaching stepmoms and like their dynamic with the other house. Since you do co-parenting, like what do you see? Do you see that's typically what it is?
Oh, with the coaching, I do see, I haven't had a lot of folks come to me from a step parent perspective. I've had one person reach out about that. And I am curious to know how you help them because I want to get them all in a room if I can
Yeah.
at that point. Talk to, so I usually will talk to the teammates. That's what I call
Mhm.
them, like co-parent
Okay,
teams.
wait. Let's put a pin on this. So because I know because I've listened to your podcast, break down the team part of it because I think this concept is amazing. I think it's awesome. And you talked earlier, I've always, I've been an athlete, I've been on teams, I'm on teams at work. And something you said in a podcast that I was like, yeah, that really like solidified it for me. Like, you guys are Team Dior because it's your kid's name. And we might be on the same team. We might not like each other sometimes. That's okay. But how did you get to that mindset, mentality?
I think for me, again, I just feel blessed. Some things just come to me. And yes, of course, I was influenced I played lacrosse up through college and did a little bit of track, but in college. But I said to say, I've learned a lot being on teams. And like you said, you don't have to like everyone on your team, but we all have the same vision. So how can everyone's bringing different skill sets. Let's leverage those skill sets. Let's focus on what we can do together versus how we can tear each other apart, what have you. We have a shared vision. I think whenever you have people who have a shared vision, you can get a lot done. If you can put that at the center and allow people to remember that that's what we're trying to achieve. And our shared vision is having a happy whole child and also enjoying the process of parenting. We should be able to enjoy this too. This is a special, unique time in our lives to be a parent. And so that's usually something that's different from messaging I hear about co-parenting dynamics. Usually people are like, put the kid first, put the kid first. I'm like, yes. And you guys you guys are important too. Like I want all our parents to enjoy, all the people on the team, if you will, to enjoy this process because it is so pivotal and it's a special time and our kids can feel it when we're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, being a team, I think that just those words too, we have an idea of what that means. It doesn't matter who you are. If you hear team, even if it's just sport related, you're thinking, oh, well, my favorite team is the Eagles or whatever, which I don't associate with any particular team. I
I
mean,
was gonna ask.
yeah, I'm not trying to get in trouble, but I do respect the Seahawks. They're in Seattle. However, people can quickly identify like, okay, team, yeah, that's right. Like, okay, a team looks like you do something together, you solve a problem together, you work hard, you're going through the trenches together. And I think it just allows people to quickly identify with, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then we just learn how to apply that to co-parenting and then run with it. But a lot of time people think they're each other's enemy.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sure you've seen that before. There's like this defensiveness, this like something under the surface that's just very divisive sometimes in the energy. And I think it has everything to do with the way things ended. And the fact that we don't have a lot of examples of it going well. We're very much taught as a society, this shit sucks. Oh, you're divorced? That sucks. And now you gotta navigate with a whole nother human that you'd even weren't a part of the selection process for, a step parent, right? And
Good
so
luck.
yeah. And so like we've already been taught to not like what's Parent Trap? Like they
Mhm.
hate it. The stepmom.
Mhm.
Who was
Lindsay Lohan and that was the
she
girl.
yeah, I forget what the stepmom's name
Susan
was.
Sarandon, is that it? No. Um,
She's in
whatever.
another step parent
Yeah,
movie.
she is. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would look it up.
But like Vicky, her name was I'm Vicky, or I'm your something Vicky. Or maybe that was her somebody in the movie, but she
That
just
is
was
quite
not
a
seen as a nice,
Ellie
lovely
Parker.
person.
Yeah.
And there's just been more examples of, hey, you're supposed to be at ends, you're supposed to be fighting, and this is supposed to suck. Versus actually this could be amazing, and maybe not like Disneyland amazing, but at least productive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when co-parents come to you, is it before they're separated? Is it after they're separated? Is it like right before, right after, or like years down the road where they're like, hey, this isn't working out? And is it usually, this is a lot of questions, so get ready. And is it usually like one dragging the other, kicking and screaming, or are they both coming, hoping for a good solution?
All of the above. That
Okay.
all of the above. Or is it D usually? But
Yeah.
anywho, I've had a mix. I've had folks where the other person's not going to come be a
Okay.
part of coaching, and so usually, no matter what's said or how they bring it about. And so I usually will, there's still a lot to be gained when it's just one person because they're still doing something that could either
Nice.
they need to set boundaries to preserve their energy with that
Hmm.
other parent, or they need to also unlearn some things and undo some like unlearn some habits around how they navigate with that person, either to protect their peace or to protect that person's peace. And so and then we also have I've had folks come to me like, hey, we're about to get a divorce together. They got
Whoa.
to be, oh, it's amazing. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like, you have made a decision. You both are coming together on this call to talk about how you want to co-parent going forward, knowing that you don't want to be together. You want to set yourselves up and your child ultimately up for success, knowing you're about to go through this divorce. So I think that's kind of actually the best time to do it.
Yeah.
And also we're talking about like, okay, how are you going to bring family along? Because family,
Right. There's
friends
that piece.
also, they might not really, they have usually good intentions, but they might actually be fanning the flames of like, you're not going to let that him get this, or you're not going to, they also don't know how to support you and going through this without making it divisive usually, and assuming negative intent sometimes. And, they have good intentions, but they're not always that helpful. And
Yeah.
so I can help them navigate. How are you going to bring your family along to this hard news and also set a boundary about, hey, we're still co-parenting. So we're still family. So you don't have to like X them out of all the family events. Like you don't have, unless, we come with that boundary that makes sense for us. But, don't feel like now they're the enemy, and like we actually would benefit more if you actually pushed us to continue to collaborate and have
Mhm.
an energy of collaboration. So
Can you talk a little about how to bring your family along? Because I see this a lot too, where specifically a mother-in-law, like let's just start there. It's usually like the matriarch, right?
right.
But maybe they stay friends with the ex and will not accept the new partner in. And how to
Mm.
navigate that, or have you dealt with that?
I haven't. I have ideas, but I bet
Okay, give
you
me your
have.
ideas.
Okay. I'll share mine, but then I want to hear yours because
Okay.
you're the expert on that. But well, as far as just like the overall bringing them along to address that, I would say, setting that boundary, like, hey, as the person who that's their parent,
Hmm.
I would put it on them really to say, hey, this is the change that we've made. Here's why. I mean, you don't have to tell them the why if you don't want to.
Yeah.
It's not their business. But like here's the changes. This is how I want you to support me. We're also on the same page. Me and the ex are on the same page about this. Here's how we want you to engage with us or the ex. And here's why in terms of the impact to our child and our dynamic and so on. And so I think just really setting that boundary and reinforcing it, and bringing them along in the sense of like the impact that it has, and the positive impact it can have if they do, respect your boundaries. But I think people just don't know how to move on, but they're grieving too, and giving them space to grieve and you know navigate this new world that they weren't expecting. People put a lot of investment and love into these relationships too, from the day they go to the wedding. They bought clothes and got a flight to go pour into this marriage and believe in it. And everything else that people do. And so the moment it ends, we're all kind of like, what? Like now we all have to adjust. And so giving them space and honoring like, hey, I know this is hard. Also maybe go therapist because
Yeah. Right.
shoveling poop on this because you haven't dealt with your own feelings.
Yeah. I really can appreciate that you are very intentional with how you coach people through all of the facets of being co-parents, because I think extended family is something that gets left behind. And so you're right, they're navigating what this divorce looks like for them. And I love that you touched on the grief part of it, because that's 100% probably, I would say probably 100% of the basis of like the hurt, right? Like they're grieving that, their kid is no longer married to whoever. And especially if you're listening to this and you're a step parent, or you are not a step parent because you're one of Sydney's people, like welcome, thank you for being here. But it is really hard when you've got an in-law that maintains a close relationship with the ex. And I have a lot of stepmoms that I've coached that are like, I don't understand, she did this, that, or the other to my partner, and I don't understand how his family can still like her. And I get that. I completely 100% get that. But you've also got to understand they've had this relationship for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, however long it's been. And it's kind of like your friends too. All of a sudden they're caught in the middle of like, who do we choose? And you automatically assume like your family is going to choose you, which isn't always the case, right? But also you can't just, I tried to expect this, but you come to realize you can't just expect people to just stop having a relationship because you deem that it's not necessary, or you deem that it's inappropriate. At the end of the day, the only thing that you get to control is you.
Right.
And you can't control what your kid does. You can't control what your partner does. You can't control what your friends do, your sister, whoever, and especially your parents, or especially your ex-partner. Like you don't get to control, you don't get to dictate their life. And so my advice to stepmoms when they're navigating this, because it is really, really hard and it is really tricky, like it should be somebody that is on your side of the team. And that's where that team part comes back in, because you're like, well, they're on my team. Well, yeah, you think that your team is your house.
Right.
And
Right.
like, okay, hold on. Your team includes people outside of your house, right? Like everyone's supposed to be acting on behalf of the best interests of the kids. And at the end of the day, if you recognize and you see that said person is not being helpful or is fanning the flames,
Right.
you see their true colors. And here's my advice: please believe them the first time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and me included, you think I can change them. I can help them change. You
Mm-hmm.
can't. You can't do that. And you're more than welcome to will or like to try dying on that hill. It's going to be a really long, painful death. But you've got to learn to say, I'm okay with setting boundaries, and I'm okay with being the pariah if that's what people deem me for being, for saying, you know what, I am not going to allow you access to me anymore, because anything I say or do, it's being held against me. Anything that our house is saying or doing is, being told to the other house, and then however it is, it's like being used against us, or whatever that case may be. But you've got to protect your own mental health. Like you said, like operate for the good of the kid, but also like you got to take care of you too. And if there's somebody that you're interacting with and it's not going well, you don't have to keep touching the stove. You already know that it's hot. So you don't have to keep going back to this person and trying to interact with them. You know that it's not going to go well. Having said that, you might just need a bit of a break for a few years to get back to the point where, okay, everyone's got a clean slate. Okay, they understand that your boundaries now glow in the dark, and they're not willing to test them. So it's everything ebbs and flows, right? Like even when it's good, there's always something that could pop up at any time.
And I like to just assume stuff will pop up. And
Mm-hmm. So then you're
if
not caught off guard.
we'll have a plan to be like, okay, I know that we are going to have conflict. We are
Yeah.
humans, it's how we roll. There's going to be conflict. I would like to think that we set ourselves up for success for when that happens so we can manage through it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, as far as the family one, that's tricky. And I appreciate that perspective. I didn't think about in-laws picking sides or what have you. Is there space for an in-law to maintain a relationship and it not be a side thing or it not be harming the new partner?
I think there is. I can tell you that now, like over 10 years later, because the beginning I was absolutely not right. There is, but you have to be strong enough in yourself. You have to have the confidence in yourself to not see it as a competition. Okay, well, if my mother-in-law is spending time with you, Sydney, that means that she likes you more. And I'm never going to be enough. I'm never, going to measure up because I'm not you. Like you're the kids' mom. Like you're always going to be better than me.
Mm.
And you have to take it back from, okay, their relationship has nothing to do with me. Their relationship was here before I was even here. And whatever insecurities that you've got festering, whatever insecurities that you've got like simmering under the surface that you didn't know you had, well, guess what? Now you know you got them. And what are you going to do with them, right? Like that will control you for the rest of your life if you let it. So you
Right.
have to get to that point, and this is what I work with stepmoms on. How do I learn to let that go?
Mm.
Right? Like I'm sure that, your ex, like you probably still communicate with his parents at like on some level.
Yeah, a little bit,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not like you guys are having Sunday dinners together still, but like you still have their grandchild,
Right. And
like
they
you're
still
still
love
going to see
me.
them.
Yeah, they still care about me as they should. Like I'm still the mother of their grandchild, and but we're respectful. There's space for all. So there's been a time where my ex's mom is in a wheelchair, and at the new house that they live in, Adama and Keisha, um, it wasn't set up to bring the wheelchair up for my son's birthday, our son's birthday party. And so it ended up being like me, Keisha, and Adama lifting her up over this barricade or whatever to bring her up, to be a part of the party, if you will. And that was like, I know, a really touching moment for my ex to see both his baby mama and now his other baby mama, because she's
Mhm.
since a baby, but both his baby mamas coming together to lift up his mother physically.
Literally.
Yes. And help him in that way. And it was just like so beautiful. Like we can all be in space together. I was there at the hospital. My mom was at the hospital with his new baby and Keisha's baby. My mom, I was there. Dior, of course, was there. That's his baby brother. And then Adama's mom was there, and even Keisha's mom was there a little bit earlier. And we're all like joking, having a good time, reminiscing on when Dior was born, which I was like, this is not about me at all. Like, but I think it's really sweet that they thought it made sense to like tie in that, because it is true. Like Adam,
Yeah.
that was he's had two experiences now having children, and it's just really beautiful.
So let
And
me ask you about that. Did they ask you to come?
we had talked about it previously, and I think Keisha has an idea, like has values community, and so I think we use jokes a little bit to kind of like have conversations sometimes. And I think there was like this kind of joke of like, oh, I realized like Dior will still go to his mom's house every other week for a week, but there'll still be a baby here. And sometimes Dior would be like, is the baby going to come with me? Or like,
Yeah, yeah.
so we were trying to like figure like, how does this all fit in? And, I think I let them know I know I had a heart of like, I'm here to support the village. Like I'm a part of the village. And I would be happy to play some role that made sense for everyone in, loving their child. And so I met one of my colleagues actually picks up her child and her child's half sibling, if you will. Not, you don't have to use those terms, but her
Well, it's
ex.
important, like in this context, right? Yeah.
I just to be clear on like the dynamic, but yeah, so she picks up both her son and her son's sibling through another mom, same dad, from school. Like that's part of their routine.
Mhm.
And so that just like put something in my brain, like, oh, I could still be helpful. I could like, there's not separation of church and state. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
like
yeah.
articulate it, but there's something there. No, I don't feel like I need to be like there and all the time. I don't think they're asking me to do that either. But as far as like if there's a big milestone, like if Dior's going to like a big game or has a sleepover or something for his birthday, and it makes sense, they're so big in age, such a big age gap. But I would love to be able to do that. And there's been a summer where Keisha's cousin, baby cousin, who's Dior's age, was staying with her. And I was like, hey, we're going to Wild Waves. Dior's the only child. I don't want to just be me and him. I want him to have a friend. And so I was like, can I bring your baby cousin who Dior's been raving about, loves her. They have a great connection. And she's like, absolutely. I was like, okay, bet I'll pay for everything, got everything, just pick up, drop off, don't worry about it. And so I liked that she trusted me to be able to do that. So I'm imagining that with baby boy, maybe, who knows? But again, no pressure. Like, it's so new to us. I've
Yeah.
never seen this done before. And so
It is. So I'm like on the other side of it. So we have a big age gap too. My stepdaughter just turned 23. My daughter is 4 and my stepson is 19. So like a big gap. Well, their mom remarried and they have twins and they are 8. They just turned 8 in August. And I remember like pick up and drop offs, like those like transition days are just really hard, like as a step parent, because your life goes from, well, like now, like when Dior's gone, like your house is quiet, right? So it's
yeah.
quiet, it's peaceful, it's perfect. Like you have it however you want it. And then you transition back to having him there and, the chaos ensues because he's a kid, right? And so I remember picking them up one day and the boys were out. They were younger though. And my stepson had said, oh, my dad's picking me up. And they were young. They were probably like my daughter's age, like 4 or 5. And they're like, oh, my dad's coming to get you. And I'm
Mm,
like, oh, thank God I'm in the car and I'm just like watching this from a distance because I want to see how they navigate this. And so
right.
my stepson was very kind and he said, no, we have the same mom, but we have a different dad. My dad is going to come and get me and I'm going to go to my dad's house. And it's interesting because now I have had to navigate that with my daughter literally just 2 nights ago. Is putting her to bed when my parents are divorced, like I was telling you. And she had asked about my parents. I said my parents were divorced, whatever. And so we'd had that conversation like earlier on in the day. And I always do this thing at night where I'm like, hey, you know what? We're going to spend 5 minutes after we get into bed and I read her stories. We're going to spend 5 minutes just snuggling and we talk about whatever. Any questions you got, anything you want to tell me about your day that you haven't told me, like tell me. And so she said, what does divorce mean? And I was like,
Mm,
oh, right. Like, divorce means when your parents aren't together anymore. Like they don't, and I try to make it age appropriate, like one lives in one house and one lives in the other house. And to see them, you go back and forth kind of thing. And so she was like, oh, well, why do people do that? I'm like, well, people do that because their marriage didn't work out or they, it's just not working anymore. They've grown apart. I'm not trying not to be like they hate each other, right? Because I don't want
right.
to perpetuate that problem. And so I'm like, their relationship just didn't work. And sometimes people are happier separated. And she was like, oh, okay. The end of the conversation. But I'm like, oh my God, like what else is she going to ask me?
Right.
And because she knows that my stepkids have a different mom than she's got. She's met them. Like we've all done things together. We've done joint graduation parties together. We've done lots of stuff together. And so she knows their mom and stepdad, but I don't think it's ever like clicked, but she's at that age. My stepson moved in full time. And so then navigating when he left to go to the military and was like here every day and then all of a sudden like, gone and like we don't see him. We didn't talk to him except for on Sundays. And well, when is he coming back? And honestly, Sydney, like I was struggling, like we're super close. Like I'm gonna try not to cry telling you this, but like I was really having a hard time with it because he was like my right arm. And then like he's gone. And then now I'm trying to explain that he's not here. And by the way, he's not coming back, right? Like he's on his own life. Like he's now an adult, he's gonna like do his own thing. She was 3 at the time. And she's like, well, when I turn 4, I'm gonna be an adult too. And she's actually moving to Seattle. One of her teacher from last year moved to Seattle. So my daughter is moving to Seattle when she's older. So we're gonna like be friends.
Oh, okay. Okay. Love it. Love it.
So
Oh.
yeah, it's interesting to navigate what that looks like. And like when he would go to his mom's, well, can I go with him? And I'm like, well, no, she's like 2.5 hours away. So it is weird to navigate. So get ready for the questions, right? Or like with my stepdaughter, one time we were out to dinner and she was talking about what was going on at her mom's house. They have goats, they're about to sell them, but she's like, well, can I come to your house and can I see the goats? And my stepdaughter looked at me like, what the hell do I say? And I was like, of course you can, we'll just work it out with your mom. And if it's a yes, then it's a yes. If it works out with our schedules, that it works out. And it's just conversations like that you're like, I did not see this conversation coming. Okay, let me try to like answer this question and not be weird to her, because I don't want her to have a weird perception of like whatever's going on. But then I also like am trying to navigate my husband sitting right here. My stepdaughter is sitting right here. I'm also sitting right here, and I'm trying to like, you know what I mean? So it's like a
A
weird,
lot to
yeah.
navigate.
So get
Yeah.
ready.
Hey, yeah, I wonder his little brother's name is Serene. I wonder how he's gonna process all of this. And I wonder if one day Tira's gonna want to live at one home versus the other, and like what's gonna play a role in that for him. And there's so many things to learn and what have you. But he was at first he was very confused. He's like, how are you giving me a sibling? Like my mom's not pregnant. How are you giving me a sibling? He just couldn't, because he's been begging for like a sibling. I was like, I'd love to give you one, but I'd like to be married first. And that's taking a moment. So like, I can't make any promises right now. Yeah. But so I think I also had just like ingrained in like, I'm going to try to give you a sibling one day. Right. And so he was just like, and he wants me to give him an older sibling.
You're gonna be looking for a stepdad for you.
Exactly. Like low key, I was like, okay, the only way that could happen is if I adopt or I, have a step sibling or stepson, stepdaughter who
is older. Yeah. How old is he?
He's 9. He just turned
9. Okay.
Yeah. So
we've talked about siblings because they're older, right? And so my daughter has friends that have younger siblings, and she does have a hard time with them because here it's just her now it's just her. So everything stays however she likes it. When she puts her toys out, they all stay however they are. Well, when you've got a 2-year-old that comes over, or 2.5-year-old, or like 18 months or whatever, and they just demolish whatever you've got out, the first few times like she would be in tears, like tantrums. And I'm like, listen, girlfriend, like they're a baby. They don't know. They're younger. They don't know. And she was like, then I don't want a sibling. I don't want one of them. All they do is destroy my stuff. I don't want a baby one. I have older ones and it's fine. And I already have a brother and a sister, so it's fine.
Oh my God.
Well, good, because we're not having another one. So good.
So fun.
Just you. Okay, so talk to me about your co-parenting, and I can't remember exactly what it's called because I know that like communication is one of them, empathy is one of them.
Yeah, the principles, yeah.
The principles, yeah.
Yeah.
How did you come up with those?
I just sat and thought. I've been loving this space because there isn't a lot of formulas already. There's a lot of opportunity to like innovate, if you will.
Yeah.
I love. And so, but let me see. I'll pull some up. They're just like right here. But yeah, I empathy. I just thought of things that I wanted and that me and my ex already kind of do. And so that was helpful to be able to like think about it that way. Let's see. I wonder if this is it. But yeah, so what I also do when I have my coaching clients is we tailor these to them, or I don't even sometimes if they need a little brainstorming activity, I'll give them some that I've already, created. But it's just from like learning, observing my clients, learning, seeing what's worked for us, what hasn't worked. I leverage those things to be able to come up with the list. But one of the things that I think is really key for folks, especially if they're really struggling, is like the first one being like, hey, we're not each other's enemy. In fact, we're actually our children's heroes. And you wouldn't want to treat your child's hero like shit, would you? Like, you wouldn't want to, if your child admires someone, are you going to go poop on that thing and make them feel bad about it? Right. Like, I don't know. So, yeah. I think that's been helpful. And kind of on that same token, a mindset around like, hey, we are still family, we're still a team. And your well-being directly impacts my child. So I'm not gonna load on to whatever's going on for you. Like if if setting a boundary is fine, like having disagreements, fine. That's healthy. But as far as like making your life a living hell and thinking that's not going to impact our child is like crazy. Like,
yeah,
was like, not to bring up celebrities, but when I thought about Future saying rude things about Russell Wilson in his rap song, Russell Wilson is
Mhm.
Sierra's husband and, stepdad to Future's son. And I'm like, now instead of Russell being able to focus on your child who he has and like being able to like spend time being a father, now he's got to think about this negative stuff that he's had to deal with. And like now you've like thrown some bad vibes his way. And you can't think that that's gonna, as much as we try to shield our children from whatever is going
Yeah.
on for us, they feel the things regardless. And
Yeah. And it's like a public stage, literally,
oh my God, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine.
right? It's
It's
hard enough, like day to day, just
humiliating
like
for him. Like,
normal people. And then yeah, it's just like, fuck, man, like really, like now I've got this publicity too. And
right,
then you
right,
have to like circumvent that, or you have to like, yeah, it puts you like on the defense. Like everything you do is like under a microscope.
right. And
Constantly.
I'd rather just like spend time with my kids or work on my initiatives or whatever, I imagine. And so anywho, and it's like, yeah, so that's one of them. And then also recognition. That's one I love. I love that, and that's something people don't always do, like recognize when the other co-parent has done something nice. And it's not because you need to tickle their ego or whatever it is. It's just like, I'm going to acknowledge, like, you made sure our kid looks so nice for photo day. Thank you so much. That was one thing I didn't have to worry about. Like, that was one thing that made our kid really happy. They felt really confident. Like, thank you so much. It doesn't have to be long, real quick.
Mhm.
That's maybe a little thing or a bigger thing. Wow, I really appreciate how you advocated for our son and his ADHD in the meeting with the parent teacher conference or whatever.
I
Um,
go so far.
yeah, and it's just acknowledging it, and it's also acknowledging it for you, like as bad as things might get in the co-parenting dynamic, like there's also can be some really good things happening. I have co-parents who come to me like, the mom, they're not doing good, they're not doing great. I was like, well, what do they offer your child? What are they, what's the good stuff that they're doing? They're like,
Yeah.
oh well, boo, boo. I was like, and they're also feeding them, putting a roof over their head. They're like, that's bare minimum. I was like, but they could potentially not do that. And so and like your daughter's loved, your daughter is this and that, right? Like maybe it's not perfect, but she feels love, she sees love, like things like that. And so it's not how you would do it, but she has those core things. And so that's key, that's success. So just trying to help people see what success they already have going on, because it can be easy to focus on like this big problem. It's like, part of this problem is because we both care so much. We care
Mhm.
so much about our child. That's a good thing. We want to do it our own way, so that's been challenging, but
Right.
like also very much care, and that's our child is set up for success in that regard. So
So
yeah.
what do you say to co-parents when I mean, I'm sure that you've seen some interesting conversations. So what do you say to them when you see that they're fighting over semantics? Like, okay, picture day, because that's what you used. Well, in picture day, I put our daughter in this, but then the other one is like, well, if I had picture day, I would have done this. Or, I let them go to bed at this time or that. And the other one's like, oh, that's too late or that's too early. I'd let them do this. How do you get them to come together?
My goal isn't to get them to come together on everything, so that helps.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
get them to reframe their thinking, because you really can't control each other's household. Like I say, make it known what your wish is and why. How does this tie it back into your child?
Yeah. Okay.
Don't force it to tie back. Like, really, is your motivation for making this ask about your child and their well-being? Because if you bring it back to that vision or the shared values you have as a team for your child's wellness, that can help with some of the filtering of decisions and what have you. So one, is it like tied back? How does this relate to the child? Like, how does this thing that we're arguing about relate to them? What was our vision? Okay, we want them to be really independent. So her choosing what outfit she wore for her photo, and maybe it looks a little crazy and a little like disoriented, but she chose it, and that teaches her that independency we talked about as a vision for her. It's like, okay, like someone can be brought along with that. They're like, all right, I guess I see that. But if one of the parents is like, but leggings, like I don't think our daughter should wear leggings. Like I've had fathers be very upset. Like I think that's inappropriate. Like I don't think that's safe. I don't want people looking at our daughter a certain way that's inappropriate for her and things like that. So then it's like, okay, well, safety. That's a vision for our daughter too. We talked about safety. Okay, is there another way to do it? Maybe she wears a long dress over the leggings. Finding opportunities to compromise, but tying it back to like our daughter versus, well, I just don't like leggings, you know, like
Yeah.
they're not taking, this is a professional photo, whatever it is.
Mhm.
um, Making sure that it's very clear that it's lining up to shared vision. And then if it doesn't, really asking yourself, is this ego? A little self-awareness is required. Like what's playing a role here? Is it a trigger for you? Is it something that really impacted you as a child, but isn't actually maybe relevant right here and right now? Um,
I think that's the hard part though, is taking the ego out of it and having that self-awareness to be
yeah.
like, okay, what is triggering me? Or what about this is triggering me? And I coach stepmoms on that too. Like, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate for you here. And I'm going to, throw you a few curveballs about whatever the situation might bring about. What do you think about that? And then they're like, oh, okay. Now I see what you're saying.
Right. It's just good to have that fresh perspective. And another thing is, so those are the ways that maybe we can get on the same page, but also I really give them space to not be on the same page with certain things. Like at the end of the day, like they're gonna learn something different from parents regardless of whether they're living together, married or not. And
Mhm.
so like mom's really good at this, dad's really good at this, or dad really doesn't like this, mom doesn't really like this. And of course it could be mom and mom, dad and dad, all the different relationship types. But I honor, I'm like, hey, if you can't control that, you guys try to talk, it's not getting there, you guys aren't able to be aligned. See the value of your daughter getting different experiences in the different house or getting different perspectives. Like, some people view leggings this way, some people view them that way. What is your perspective on this daughter? And maybe she's too, it depends on the topic, can't be too,
For sure.
inappropriate for her to think about, but um really recognizing and having peace knowing that your child's going to get different perspectives, and this world is full of different perspectives, is giving them like maybe a crash early course on it, on how life works, and empowering them at some point that one day you get to make your own decision. I see we don't, me and your father may not have the same idea around it, but at the end of the day we care about you, we love you, and you'll get to see these different ways of running a household, including time. Here's why we do this here. I respect that your father does something different, and you're gonna have different experiences here, and you get to learn that you get to have choice later on and see what works for you. And so I hope that gives parents like peace of mind. Like, okay, you feel anxious, like this is the person I love so much, I want them to have this great lifestyle, and I have maybe one vision of what that looks like, and recognizing, okay, they're going to be okay, they're resilient, like I don't have to control this, like they're going to get another perspective, they get to learn that one day they get to choose. And also, here's how we can manage conflict or agree to disagree. You can model that.
I like that
Yeah.
you say agree to disagree. And if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I'm not experiencing that with my co-parent, or I'm not experiencing that with the other house, I'm experiencing it with my stepkid. I
um,
went through this too, and it works the exact same way. Like it could be, I hate how this teacher teaches this, or I don't like that this coach does this, or, this person does that differently than you do, or, my mom does things this way, or my dad does things this way. Totally valid. And here's what I would always say to my step kids: everyone does things differently. There are certain things that are done in a specific order, like if you're at work or if you're running a place. They were both in sports. But that's the beauty, kind of like you said, of having different people in your life. Your coaches coach differently than the next coach in line. Your teachers teach differently from one class to another. Your parents parent differently from one parent to another. The world that you're about to be launched into, everyone is going to be different. And it's imperative for you to learn how to navigate different ways of doing things.
right. I
And
couldn't agree.
it doesn't have to be done one specific way, but like, how do we get there? So I love that you touch on that. When you are working and coaching co-parents, do you have like an initial questionnaire that they fill out before they get to you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, one of the questions is just trying to gauge, like, how would you describe your co-parenting dynamic from 1 to 5,
Do they
5
both
being
have to do it?
well, if usually most of my clients are coming alone.
Okay.
Not as often that I have two people coming together, or three. I would love to have like a step family.
Imagine if you could have
Yeah,
them all.
yeah, it
Yeah.
would be powerful. Looking forward to that if someone's interested in that. But yeah, I have a questionnaire, and yes, they fill it out separately if they are
Mhm.
coming together and coaching. And the question is like, how, number one question for me is like, what are the barriers? What's been challenging? What do you want to see that's different? after what do you want coaching to help with, and like kind of a skit rating 1 to 5, like 5 being we're all going to Disneyland together as a blended family, we love it, or 1 being like I can't stand the sight of this person, or we cannot be effective in co-parenting. And so, and I hope that by the end that number ticks up a little bit.
Yeah, that's always nice. So do you typically recommend they come like every other week as needed? What do you recommend?
I'm flexible. I don't want them to wait too long between sessions.
It creeps back
But I
in.
also realize they're parents and they're doing all these things, so I get it. But yeah, I usually recommend I let them choose. I have like a set amount of days or whatever, and they can just pick times out of those days. And then they can go ahead and pick something. But I say try not to wait too long. I had someone who like did boom, 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 like back to back to back, which I felt like I would have pushed it out so he could let himself process the information and so on and so forth. But I don't want to force things too much, because I know that people.
Okay, so how do people find you?
Oh, I have a website. I have Instagram, Exes and Babies, which EXES and babies .com, and that's our same handle for every social media platform we're on: Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it.
Oh, you're even on LinkedIn too. Oh, okay. I'm gonna take
Well, because of the coaching part, right? So I think that's a great place to go to find professionals who value the idea of self-development and like getting better in trainings and workshops, and so I think it's a good, from a business standpoint, LinkedIn is a good place for the trainings that you offer and such.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much for being on here. I'm like, I like to pick your brain. I think that it's just everything is very well thought out. You've got like a system for all of it. I'm like, that's incredible. Having said that, I know that everything isn't perfect all of the time because it's not, it never is, right? You always got to prep for when it's not. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're doing for the community. I love learning about what you're doing for stepmoms and families.
Thanks. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.